Welcome, friends, to another discussion where we try to look at the economic events of our time not through the lens of the corporate media or the politicians who serve them, but through a critical lens that asks the fundamental questions about who wins, who loses, and why the system functions the way that it does. I want to talk to you today about a bridge. It is called the Gordie Howe International Bridge, and it will connect Windsor, Ontario in Canada to Detroit, Michigan in the United States. Now, on the face of it, this is a story about infrastructure concrete steel cables and the movement of cars and trucks across a river. But if you stop there, you miss the entire point. You miss the story of capitalism in its late declining phase. You miss the story of how economic power is wielded and how the working class is held hostage by the political theater of the ruling class. We have a situation now where former President and current President Donald Trump has threatened to block this bridge to stop it from opening to hold it hostage. And we have Mark Carney, the former central banker, the man of high finance, stepping in to defend it. To understand this, you have to understand what a bridge actually is in a capitalist economy. A bridge is not built so that you can visit your grandmother on the other side of the river. That is a nice side effect, but that is not why billions of dollars are invested. A bridge is a vein in the circulatory system of capital. It is built to facilitate the movement of commodities. It is built so that General Motors and Ford and Stellantis can move auto parts back and forth across a border 5 or 6 times before a car is finished. It is a subsidy to the auto industry. It is a subsidy to the logistics companies. And who pays for this subsidy? In this case, the Canadian public paid for it. The Canadian government put up over $4 billion. The United States government, because of its political dysfunction and its crumbling infrastructure budget, paid almost nothing. And yet here we are at the 11th hour, and the American leader says, I might not let you open it unless you pay me. This is what we call rent-seeking behavior. It is the behavior of a declining power. When you can no longer outproduce the world, when you can no longer compete on the basis of productivity or innovation, you turn to extortion. You use your political borders, your military might, your control over the choke points of trade to extract wealth from others. Trump is saying effectively, I do not care that you paid for the bridge. I own the land on this side, and you will pay me a toll to land your goods here. It is the logic of the feudal lord who puts a chain across the river and demands a payment from every merchant boat that passes. We thought we had moved beyond feudalism into capitalism, where the free market and the free flow of goods were the holy grails. But here we see the contradiction. The capitalist system needs the goods to flow. General Motors needs that axle to get from Windsor to Detroit. But the political system of the nation state, which is the container for this capitalism, is breaking down. It is resorting to gangster tactics because it has no other cards left to play. And then you have Mark Carney. Now, let us not be confused about who Mark Carney is. He is not a hero of the working class. He is a man of the banks. He ran the Bank of Canada. He ran the Bank of England. He represents the rational wing of the capitalist class. He represents the globalists who understand that for the system to survive, for the profits to keep flowing, for the exploitation of the worker to continue smoothly, you need stability. You need bridges that open on time. You need contracts that are honored. Carney looks at Trump and he sees chaos. He sees a threat to the smooth operation of the machine that extracts value from the workers of Canada and the United States. When Carney speaks, he speaks the language of cooperation, of commerce, of tourism. But what he is really saying is that you are endangering the supply chain. You are endangering the profits of the shareholders. This is the conflict we are watching. It is not a conflict between the US and Canada, really. It is a conflict between two wings of the ruling class. On one side, you have the rational managers of the system like Carney who want to keep the exploitation running efficiently. On the other side, you have the disruptors, the nationalists, the demagogues like Trump who are willing to break the machine if it gives them leverage, if it gives them a political win in the short term. And where are the people in this? Where are the workers of Detroit and Windsor? They are the ones who built the bridge. They are the ones pouring the concrete. They are the ones driving the trucks. And they are the ones who will suffer if the bridge is closed. If the supply chains stop, the factories close, the workers are laid off, the prices of goods go up, the working class pays the price for the squabbles of the elites. We have to look deeper at why this is happening now. Why is the United States so terrified of a bridge that it did not even pay for? It is because the United States is an empire in decline. It is an empire that has hollowed out its own industrial base. It has shipped its manufacturing jobs overseas or across the border in search of cheaper labor, and now it finds itself dependent. It is dependent on supply chains it does not control. It is dependent on infrastructure it cannot afford to build. And this dependency creates fear. It creates a lash-out reaction. Trump is the symptom of this fear. He is the expression of an American capitalism that knows it is losing its dominance and is trying to claw it back, not by building better things, but by threatening to break the things that others have built. Consider the absurdity of the economics here. We are told constantly that the private sector is the engine of growth. We are told that the government should get out of the way. And yet here is a project that is entirely dependent on government funding and government permission. The private sector did not build this bridge on its own. The private sector would never take such a risk without the guarantee of the state. The state takes the risk, the public takes the risk, and the private corporations take the profit. That is the standard operating procedure of modern capitalism. But now the state is failing to do even its basic job of maintaining the conditions for commerce. The U.S. state is becoming a barrier to capital rather than its facilitator. This is a crisis for the system. When the political shell of the nation state becomes a fetter on the economic forces of production, you get tension, you get conflict, and eventually you get an explosion. The Gordie Howe Bridge is a microcosm of the world economy today. It is a physical link in a world that is politically fracturing. We have spent the last 40 years building a globalized economy based on the idea that borders would become less important, that trade would integrate us all into one happy market. That was the neoliberal dream. That was the dream that people like Mark Carney sold to us. They told us, don't worry about your factory closing. Don't worry about your wages stagnating because cheap goods will flow across the border and everything will be fine. Well, now the factory is closed, the wages are stagnant, and the border is closing too. The promise has been broken. The neoliberal order is collapsing, and in its place we are seeing the return of naked power politics. We must also talk about the specific leverage being used here. Trump is using the power of the permit, the power of the customs agent. This is bureaucratic power weaponized. It shows you the lie of the free market. There is no free market. There is only a market structured by laws, by treaties, by enforcement. And those who control the enforcement control the market. Canada thought it had a deal. Canada thought that if it paid for the bridge, if it played by the rules, the U.S. would honor its commitments. But in a world of declining profitability, in a world of fierce competition for shrinking markets, honor means nothing. Contracts mean nothing. The only thing that matters is power. Who has the power to stop the truck? Who has the power to close the gate? This situation should be a wake-up call. It should be a wake-up call for Canadians who think they can rely on the benevolence of the United States. It should be a wake-up call for American workers who think that protectionism and trade wars will somehow bring back the prosperity of the 1950s. It will not. Blocking a bridge does not create a job. It destroys efficiency, it raises costs, and it invites retaliation. It is a race to the bottom. And while Trump and Carney argue over the bridge, while they posture and threaten and negotiate, the fundamental problems of the economy remain untouched. The inequality, the lack of democracy in the workplace, the instability of the market system, these are not addressed. They are arguing over who gets to collect the toll while the bridge itself is built on the backs of the people. But here is where it gets interesting. The American state under Trump is not acting as a rational manager for American capital. The American auto companies want this bridge. General Motors wants this bridge. Ford wants this bridge. They need the parts to flow freely. So why is Trump threatening to block it? Because the state has another function. It is also a site of political conflict. It is a tool that politicians use to build their own power bases. Trump is appealing to a section of the working class that has been devastated by deindustrialization. He is telling them, I am fighting for you, I am making Canada pay. It is a lie, of course. Blocking the bridge will not bring back the steel mills to Pittsburgh. It will not reopen the factories in Detroit. In fact, it will probably hurt the very workers he claims to represent, because if the supply chains are disrupted, they are the first ones to be laid off. But it is a powerful lie. It is a lie that taps into the anger and the frustration of people who have been left behind by 40 years of neoliberalism. And this brings us to the tragedy of the working class in this story. The workers of Windsor and Detroit have more in common with each other than they do with either Trump or Carney. They are both victims of the same system. They are both forced to sell their labor power to survive. They are both subject to the whims of corporate managers who can move their jobs across the border at the stroke of a pen. And yet they are being pitted against each other. They are being told that their enemy is the worker on the other side of the river. The American worker is told that the Canadian worker is stealing his job. The Canadian worker is told that the American politician is threatening his livelihood. This is how the ruling class maintains its power. Divide and rule. They divide us by nationality, by race, by religion, by gender, so that we do not see who the real enemy is. The real enemy is not the Canadian who builds the bridge or the American who drives the truck. The real enemy is the system that turns a bridge into a weapon. The real enemy is the class of people who own the bridge, who own the factories, who own the politicians, and who use them all to enrich themselves at our expense. Mark Carney understands this game very well. He is a master of it. He presents himself as the adult in the room, the technocrat, the one who follows the rules. He talks about rules-based international order. But what is this order really? It is an order designed by and for the banks and the multinational corporations. It is an order that allows capital to move freely across borders while workers are trapped behind walls. It is an order that protects the property rights of investors while stripping away the social rights of citizens. When Carney defends the bridge, he is not defending the rights of workers to have a job. He is defending the rights of investors to have a return on their capital. He is defending the sanctity of the contract. And while that is better for the stability of the system than Trump's chaos, it is not a solution for the working class. It is just a more polite form of exploitation. Let us imagine for a moment what a different kind of system would look like. Imagine a socialist system where the economy is planned democratically by the people who do the work. In such a system, a bridge would be built because it is needed, not because it generates a profit. It would be built to connect communities, to facilitate the exchange of goods and ideas, to bring people together. There would be no border guards stopping trucks to demand a toll. There would be no politicians using the bridge as a bargaining chip in a trade war. The bridge would belong to the people of both countries. It would be a commons, and the workers who built it and the workers who use it would decide how it is managed. They would not be hostages to the whims of a president or a prime minister. They would be the masters of their own destiny. But we do not live in that world yet. We live in a world where every aspect of our lives is commodified, where every human interaction is turned into a transaction, where every public good is potential prey for private looting. The threat to the Gordie Howe Bridge is a warning. It is a warning that the stability we took for granted is gone. The era of easy globalization is over. We are entering a new era of conflict, of protectionism, of economic nationalism. And in this new era, the old rules do not apply. Contracts can be broken, treaties can be ignored, allies can be betrayed. It is a dog-eat-dog world, and the biggest dogs are off the leash. The economic consequences of this are profound. If you cannot rely on the supply chain, if you cannot be sure that your parts will arrive on time, you have to change the way you do business. You have to stockpile inventory. You have to build redundant factories. You have to source your materials locally, even if it costs more. This means higher costs. It means lower productivity. It means inflation. And who pays for inflation? You do. The worker pays. Your wages do not go up, but the price of your car does. The price of your food does. The price of your heating oil does. Inflation is a way of transferring wealth from the poor to the rich. It is a hidden tax on the working class. And policies like Trump's policies, like blocking bridges and imposing tariffs, are inflationary. They make everything more expensive. They make life harder for the average person. But there is another layer here, the psychological layer. What does it do to a society when its leaders behave like gangsters? What does it do to our sense of solidarity, our sense of shared purpose? It erodes it. It makes us cynical. It makes us fearful. It makes us turn inward to look out only for ourselves and our own tribe. And that is the most dangerous thing of all, because the only power the working class has is its solidarity. The only way we can fight back against the bosses and the billionaires is by standing together, by realizing that the auto worker in Detroit and the auto worker in Windsor are brothers and sisters in the same struggle. If we allow them to divide us, if we allow them to make us see each other as enemies, then we have already lost. We have to ask ourselves, why is the infrastructure in the United States crumbling in the first place? Why is it that the richest country in the history of the world cannot build a bridge without begging for money from its neighbor? It is because the surplus value produced by the American worker has been siphoned off. It has been taken by the military-industrial complex to fight endless wars abroad. It has been taken by the financial sector to fuel speculative bubbles in the stock market and real estate. It has been taken by the rich in the form of tax cuts. There is no money left for bridges because the money has been stolen. It has been legally stolen through the mechanisms of the capitalist state. And now, when the consequences of that theft become undeniable, when the bridges start to fall down or fail to be built, the politicians look for a scapegoat. They blame Canada, they blame China, they blame immigrants. They blame anyone but the system that they themselves created and profit from. The Gordie Howe Bridge is named after a hockey player, a man who was known for his toughness, for his skill, for his ability to play the game. But the game we are watching now is not hockey. It is not a game with rules and referees. It is a game of power politics, where the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. And right now, the working class is weak. We are disorganized. We are divided. We are confused by the propaganda of the media. But we have the numbers. We have the potential power. If we can see through the lies, if we can understand the reality of the situation, we can change the game. We can build a society where bridges are not weapons, where borders are not barriers, and where the economy serves the needs of the many, not the greed of the few. Let us look at the specifics of the auto industry again, because it is central to this story. The just-in-time production method. This was hailed as a miracle of efficiency. No warehouses, no inventory, just parts arriving exactly when they are needed. It saved the corporations billions, but it also made the system incredibly fragile. One hiccup, one delay at the border, and the whole thing shuts down. It is efficiency for the sake of profit, but it is fragility for the workers. When the line stops, the worker is sent home. The worker loses wages. The corporation still has its capital, its machines, its patents, but the worker has only their time, and if they cannot sell their time, they cannot eat. This fragility is a design feature of neoliberal capitalism. They stripped all the redundancy out of the system to maximize short-term profit, and now we are paying the price for their greed. The threat to the bridge exposes this fragility. It shows that the system is built on sand. And what about the environmental cost? We are building massive infrastructure to move cars that burn fossil fuels. We are spending billions to prop up an industry that is destroying the planet. Neither Trump nor Carney is talking about that. They are arguing over who controls the bridge, but they are not asking if we should be building a transportation system based on individual automobiles in the first place. A rational socialist society would be investing in high-speed rail, in public transit, in green energy. We would be building bridges for trains, not for trucks. But under capitalism, we are locked into the logic of the past. We are locked into the logic of the oil companies and the car companies. They dictate what gets built and what gets blocked. The bridge is a monument to a dying era, an era of carbon and steel and exploitation. The Canadian response led by Carney is instructive. They are not challenging the premises of American power. They are trying to negotiate with it. They are trying to find a compromise. They are offering to buy more American weapons to allow more American investment to align their policies more closely with Washington. This is the strategy of appeasement. It is the strategy of the junior partner. Canada is a wealthy country, but it is a dependent country. Its economy is structurally tied to the U.S., and this dependency limits its options. It cannot truly stand up to the U.S. because its ruling class is integrated with the American ruling class. The Canadian capitalists need the American market. They will sacrifice the interests of Canadian workers to keep that market open. They will accept the insults and the threats from Trump because they have no choice. Their wealth depends on it. So where does this leave us? It leaves us with a clear picture of the dead end of capitalism. We have a system that can generate immense wealth but cannot distribute it fairly. A system that can build technological marvels but cannot use them for the common good. A system that connects the world in a web of commerce but divides it in a web of conflict. The Gordie Howe Bridge, which should be a symbol of cooperation, has become a symbol of dysfunction. It stands there, or it will stand there, as a testament to the contradictions of our time, a bridge to nowhere if the politics of hate and greed prevail. We must not be spectators in this drama. We must not just watch the news and shake our heads. We must organize. We must educate ourselves and our neighbors. We must build institutions of working class power, unions, community organizations, political parties that represent us, not the donors. We need to demand that infrastructure be public, that it be democratic, that it be sustainable. We need to demand that the economy be run for people, not for profit. The story of the bridge is not over, it is just beginning. And how it ends will depend on us. Will we allow them to divide us and rule us? Or will we build our own bridges? Bridges of solidarity, bridges of struggle, bridges to a better world. Think about the sheer waste of resources involved here. The lawyers, the lobbyists, the negotiators, the bureaucrats, all spending endless hours and millions of dollars arguing over jurisdiction and tolls. None of that labor produces value. None of it builds a house or grows food or teaches a child. It is waste, pure waste generated by the friction of conflicting capitalist interests. In a rational society, that labor could be used to solve real problems. We could be curing cancer, we could be housing the homeless, we could be cleaning up the oceans, but instead we are paying people to fight over a bridge. This is the irrationality of capitalism. It squanders human potential on a massive scale. And finally, let us consider the future. What happens if Trump follows through? What happens if he blocks the bridge? It will be a disaster for the economy, yes. But it might also be a clarifying moment. It might be the moment when people realize that the emperor has no clothes, that the system is broken beyond repair, that the people in charge do not know what they are doing. Crisis can be an opportunity. It can be an opportunity to break with the old ways of thinking, to imagine something new. When the old world is dying and the new one struggles to be born, as Gramsci said, now is the time of monsters. Trump is a monster, but monsters can be defeated. The bridge can be opened not by the grace of a president, but by the demand of the people. We have the power to stop the wheels of production. We have the power to shut down the logistics networks. If the workers on both sides of the border decided that the bridge would open, it would open. If the truck drivers refused to stop at the border would disappear. We forget our own power. We have been taught to be passive consumers of politics, but we are the producers of the world. Without us, nothing moves. Without us, no bridge is built, no car is made, no profit is realized. That is the secret they want to keep from us. That is the truth that the Gordie Howe Bridge reveals if we look closely enough. The power is ours. We just have to take it. Thank you for joining me. I hope this discussion has given you something to think about, something to discuss with your co-workers and your families. Do not accept the narrative they feed you. Question everything. Look for the class interest behind the policy. Look for the profit motive behind the patriotism. And remember that a better world is possible. A world where bridges unite us instead of dividing us. Until next time.